殺道師匠無常大菩提 Good evening. I like to talk about knowledge and wisdom tonight. I have already talked about this topic before, but this topic is very important in Buddhism, so I like to repeat it. When you have some question, will you present me any question? So, at first, will you see this paper? And will you read it, the whole paper? Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Oh, no, that's yeah. Thank you.
The seekingness of knowledge. All that is in the world is nothing but concept. That concept, when it is cognized, is still another concept. Concept of a flower is not a flower, and concept of happiness is not happiness. Man is easily confused with his concept and his objective entity. Man should be aware of that he does not know anything about subjectivity or objectivity. When he has comprehended this, he enables him to be free from all kinds of illusions and perverted views, and his mental state becomes pure and clean. 7. When his mental state is pure and clean, his living world is pure and clean, because the mind and its world are correlative. 8. There is a great difference between wisdom, prana paramita, and human knowledge. The former is an innate capability and transcendental intuition, while the latter is an acquired accumulation.
Thank you.
There's 2 more.
Oh, one more? 2 more?
2 more.
Oh.
9. True wisdom, prana paramita, is profound and pure insight, which is equally possessed by all sentient beings. 10. However, it is not yet disclosed when one's mental state is not pure and clean, and is defiled by illusions and perverted views. Likewise, the moon does not shine brightly when it's covered by the dark clouds.
Thank you. Here is a good story. It was in India. There was a very generous king who had a white big elephant. It was so rare, unusual, and powerful. This king was very proud of his possession of the white elephant. And he wanted to show it to the blind man in his country. He ordered to the whole country the certain date. All blind men came to the castle or court. So many blind men gathered at the court of the castle. his retainers, the pull that big elephant from his its house. But the blind man couldn't see that elephant. King said to the blind man, "Gentleman, I have a very big white elephant. You can see it. Just he is in front of you. You can touch it." Then people, walked to the elephant and touched to the big animal. One blind man touched to the elephant on its nose, trunk, and he thought, by himself, "Oh, this is like a water pipe, just like this. This is very alike to the water pipe." Another one touched to the tusk. He said it was like a sharp spear. The other man touched to the ear. He exclaimed himself, it was like a blanket. The other one touched to the foot. "Oh, this is like a big tree." The other one touched to the body. He thought it was like a wall. And the other one touched to the tail and thought it was like a rope. And later, the king asked the people, blind man, "What was my elephant like?" One person said it was like a water pipe. All other blind men said, no, it was not like a water pipe. It is like a spear." "Oh, no, you are wrong." "It is like a rope." "Oh, no, you are wrong too." "It is like a blanket." "Blanket?" It is no. All argued. They never agreed each other. Human knowledge is always like this. So the minister of that country asked the king later, privately, "Your Majesty, do you really know what elephant is?" King, no, I don't know anything about the elephant. That man, see some object, any object, and touch or hear, smell, sometimes taste, and produce their own image, mental image of the object. But that mental image is not object. Mental image always says a concept or knowledge, but the knowledge of an object is not object. For instance, that this flower, you are seeing, I'm seeing it. But when I see from this side, you are looking at this flower from that side. Shape is quite different, and the color is quite different. So you know, that I can produce my concept of this flower. And you can produce your concept of this flower. Those concepts must be quite different. You know? And also, smell is different. You know, smell is your feeling or sensation. Of course, color is your sensation and my sensation. And matter is our, you know, another concept. So, what does this flower has? Does it have any own reality or own characteristics or some activities? No, all human, you know, judgment, you know, idea. Therefore, we call it empty. It has no substance, no characteristics, no appearances, no smell, no beauty, no how to say, no value. All human, you know, idea, you know, that that is, you know, we call substance, you know, characteristics, activities, value, beauty, so on. You know. All human, you know, judgment or discrimination or idea. So, what is flower? Do you know? Nothing. Flower is just, you know, the concept, you know, of our mind. And that concept become, you know, our memory right away. And the concept does not stay in our mind. You know, even very, very short moment. Everything is changing. Nothing can stay, even short moment. So, do you know what flower is? Does flower exist? No. So, in Buddhism, Buddha said, no, everything in existence has no self-existences, no self-nature. Then, is it nothing? Not nothing. Is it empty? Not empty. Is it something? Not something. What is that? We cannot explain it because we cannot obtain it, we cannot grasp it, we cannot understand it. Therefore, we can say only as it is. Everything is as it is. Such. That is tasata. Tasata means suchness. As it is. As that is. This plant looks really. I feel some, you know, feeling. That is my feeling. Okay? It has no feeling. No? It has a color. That is my sensation. That color is not, you know, belongs to the plant. It has a cost. Maybe, you know, that's $10, $20, $50, I don't know. But that is, you know, the selling cost. but it has no cost. It has no beauty, it has no value, no substance. But the people put any idea on it, in any value on it. That is human valuation, human creation. It is not plant, that's how to say, reality of the plant, or existence of this plant, nature of this plant. Plant is just as it is. You cannot negate it. You cannot affirm it. It is beyond human affirmation or negation. It is beyond existence and non-existence. Existence is only human idea. Non-existence is another human idea. Plant is beyond human idea, just as it is. Any question? Yes, sir.
The thought just came into my mind having to do with language.
Yes, sir.
And the general creation of language and
Yes.
the general usage of language
Yes, sir.
by itself is discriminatory.
Yeah.
And and then the thought came to my mind, something to do with silence as being sort of a solution to making discriminating thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, discrimination belongs to the human mind. So plant does not discriminate. It doesn't say, I am a plant. Only discriminatory it belongs to the human side. Awareness or understanding, it belongs to human mind. Plant does not know anything. So, he has no affirmation. Plant doesn't affirm anything and doesn't negate anything. He is not a known or a knower. But the human mind is always subjective. So, human mind is always a knower, not a known. So, that's in Buddhist sutra, everything, all existences in this world are human concept, nothing but concept. Is it understandable? Or any, any opposition? Yes, sir.
There is a riddle.
Yes, sir.
A man wonders if a tree is cut in the forest,
Yeah,
or if a branch falls from a tree in the forest,
yeah,
and no one is present to hear the
Yeah.
falling.
yeah,
Is there a sound?
yeah. No sound at all. Yeah, because no one knows that. No one has no concept of sound. Therefore, no one can hear that.
What about the birds?
Huh?
What about birds or other animals?
Birds or animal? I don't know. Did you ask the bird?
No.
No. So you don't know.
But what if you set up a tape recorder?
A tape recorder, can you hear the tape recorder say, if there was a big sound, it said.
You could hear the sound of the tape recorder.
The tape recorder has no ear, so it has no, hearing.
It has a microphone.
Yeah, even microphone. It has, microphone cannot hear any sound,
But it can record sound.
Yeah, recorder has no sound by itself. Recorder has a very small, that gather, or some, how to say,
Groove.
crew,
Groove.
flu.
Groove. Record? Groove.
any ditch, you know, kind of, how to say, that's a small
Wait.
wave, wave of the, when, that needle, vibrate and make sound, But, that videotape itself has no sound, only needle, And, that box, sound box make a sound. But it is not sound yet. Vibration of air is not sound, of course. That vibration of air, vibrate our eardrum and ear knob. This vibration of ear knob, comes to the, mind function that computer. Human mind is like a computer. And asking to the memory, many memories in our mind. Then this computer answers, this is sound. Yes, sir?
Well, I have a question. Okay.
Yes.
So, say there's a thorn tree growing.
Yeah,
The thorn tree is a concept because you see it.
yeah.
Now, a branch falls off of the thorn tree, and you're walking along barefoot,
Mm-hmm.
and you step on a thorn.
Mm-hmm.
The thorn goes inside your foot.
Who
Does
did?
Does the thorn in your foot, does that not exist because it's also a concept? Or?
No, of course not. Of course not. Because whose foot? Your foot?
My foot.
Oh, that is your sensation.
I see.
Okay? If you, step on some stone, you feel pain or hurt, But no other person feel nothing. Is that, but when you did, such experience, you can say, I had a pain. That pain does not stay even 1 second. It's gone. Where is that pain? Nowhere anymore. But in your memory, as a memory you have in your mind. Memory is not, that's real, things. Everything is gone. Yes, ma'am.
Are humans born with concepts? Are they born with concepts as infants?
Born?
Yeah. Are we born with concepts?
Oh, yeah, that birth of the child.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is your concept. Yes, sir.
I think she meant the human mind within an infant. Are there concepts within the human mind of an infant?
You means baby himself has a concept?
So?
Yes, that's what I meant. I meant, are we born with concepts?
Oh.
As soon as we're born, when a baby sees a flower, is that just
Yeah.
this concept?
I'm sorry, we have no baby here, so I cannot ask him. I ask you, when you are born, you have some memory? Do you have?
A little bit, very little.
Wonderful. Unusual. So, that memory is your concept.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned before that this plant doesn't feel or conceptualize, is that right?
Yeah, concept when somebody see it and touch it, okay, smell it and taste it, then people can make produce own concept.
Yeah, but I thought you said that the plant itself doesn't do that?
No, I don't know. That ask
okay.
plant.
Okay.
Not my problem.
Okay, I thought you said that it didn't. I was going to ask.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we have, yes, Mr. Fishman, do you have it? Oh, good. That, everything is, yes, sir.
I just couldn't help but think about stepping on a thorn, that if you have a concept of this thorn in your foot, you could cut off your foot.
Pardon me, I couldn't hear. Last part, please.
If you're walking through the woods and you step on a thorn
Yeah.
in your foot, and you have a concept of this thorn in your foot, that you have a concept of hurting, but
Yeah.
if you have a concept of hurting, you can cut off your foot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is not a concept. That is, a skin problem, huh? Yeah, that skin problem is a concept. If we have no concept of cut of skin, no, there is no skin cut. Yeah, no one knows it. Yes, sir.
Is it possible for two minds,
Two minds? No, at one time, no.
possible for two minds to perceive exactly the same thing?
No. There is no two minds at one person can possess. Two minds at one time. No.
Two people simultaneously.
Yeah. That's the two person. That is one. That both are concept. I have a mind. That is that I is concept. Mind is another concept. So you can think, that I have a mind, I have a body, that is, concept of my body, concept of my mind. You are my concept, not my concept. Any other question? Okay, then. All concept of being or objectivities are not real, but not unreal. Do you understand that? No. Okay. When you say no, that is kind of understanding. If you do not understand, you can't say no. No? Therefore, affirmation and negation are the same answer. No? When you affirm something, you have to negate first. Negative concept and affirmative concept arise together, depend on each other. Only one concept does not arise. Happy concept does not arise by itself without concept of suffering. Can you follow me? Yes, very good. So all dualism does not arise, is not correct. Death and life. Does not exist at one time, at the same time. Both death and life, do not exist at a different time. Not the same time, not a different time. Most of people have a dualistic mind. Therefore, they understand that life existed before the death. This comes later. No. This kind of person is called stupid. I'm sorry to say so. I always think so. Sometime. So, you know, that's, there is no, you know, anything can appear or arise by itself alone. And also we can say there is no thing, no, which exists by itself alone without others. Anything. I myself cannot, you know, exist, you know, by myself alone, without any other things, without floor, without air, without earth, without the sun, without the moon, without plant, without flower, without all friend, you know. I cannot exist by myself alone. This is the doctrine of interdependency. Buddha, you know, that started from this theory, and you know that's how to develop it into enlightenment. Yes, sir.
Can nothing exist without something?
No, nothing can exist. You say? No, nothing cannot exist. Or it is nothing itself is beyond existence or non-existence. You shouldn't say nothing does not exist. You know, you don't say that. Nothing because you don't know what nothing is.
Non-existent.
No, not non-existence. No, not existence or not non-existence.
What does non-existence mean?
I don't know. It is such. It is conditionally, we call it nothing. But also, something is also conditionally, we call it something. When we, you know, we can see it, you know, that's a flower. It must be something, but it is nothing, okay? Nothing but something, you know. I don't know which is which. This flower is something or nothing. No, I don't know. You don't know too. So, wise men always say nothing. Not like me. I'm so stupid that I can speak, you know. Yes, sir.
I got a really stupid question.
Yes, sir.
Now, what's a good way to make sure that the moon shines brightly? I mean,
Yeah.
what's a good way to make sure that it isn't covered by dark clouds?
You know that, do you think that the moon is shining?
Halfway. 2 weeks.
And therefore darkness is here. If the moon does not shine, there is no darkness anywhere. The concept of light and the concept of darkness are dependent on each other, you know, help each other. When we have no light, there is no darkness. When there is no darkness, there is no light. Light never, touch to the darkness. Darkness never touch to the light. So some people say, you know, light the break down, you know, break up the darkness. No, that is not true. No. Because darkness and that light is always, you know, quite different. You know, dimension is different. So light never touch to the darkness. Darkness does not touch to the light. And light and darkness, you know, are, you know, just depend on each other. They cannot exist, you know, that at the same time and the same place. Darkness cannot exist in darkness. Darkness cannot exist in light. Do you know that? So darkness and the light both do not exist at the same time, same place. How about a different time or different place? No. So everything is so, so strange. Not like that people think. Ordinary human mind is very, very superficial, shallow. I don't know your mind. Your mind is different. Yes, sir.
If I close one eye, what do I see?
Oh, can you see darkness? Darkness? When you close your eyes, can you see darkness?
No, just one.
One eyes?
Yeah, one eye.
One eyes can see, that darkness.
One eye sees darkness, the other one sees light.
Yeah, darkness is not existence. It is your concept. And light is your concept, not, that true existence. No. Yes, sir.
What is true existence?
Oh, I don't know.
How can you talk about it?
Oh, that's the only way talk, that people say, have a concept. Do you have a concept of something?
True existence?
Yeah, true existence or non-existence? Oh, yeah, that is your concept. There is no non-existence anywhere. There is no true existence nowhere, anywhere, and also there is no, true non-existence anywhere.
Does true mean beyond human
Concept.
concept?
Yeah.
But isn't truth a human concept?
Now, everything, truth and anything is a human concept. If that we have no concept, we have no awareness. Yes.
So is there no difference between percept and concept?
Pardon me.
Is there no difference between percept,
Perception and percept and conception. Yeah, very close together. Perception is just in the Western the psychology. It's a little different. That process because concept is a little later after the perception. But in Buddhism, Buddhist psychology, there is no process. And the beginning and the ending comes at the same time. Yeah. Therefore, no beginning, no ending, no middle. So there is nothing. The plant, like, some people, seed is first. Okay? We put, sow the seed in the ground. So it comes bud, how to say, that small sprout, come up. Then on the ground, in the air. And grows bigger and bigger and become a tree. And produce many leaves and flowers and fruits. And the seeds are in the fruit. So this process that is there is this kind of process in a tree. But that is a human point of view. You understand very intuitively. Yeah, but in the wisdom's world, there is no such process. No? Because change, is not a process. The change, for instance, egg become a chicken, chicken become a hen or a cuckoo, That is a process. People, sometimes discuss, does the egg first or chicken first? No? But wise men never say, discuss like this. No? Because there is no chicken without egg. There is no egg without a chicken. They are one thing, different, face. You see my hand, this is the front of my hand, this is the back of my hand. Can you see both sides at one time? No. Just like some people see the chicken only, without the hen. No? Just, they are seeing the egg without hen. So they discriminate. Chicken and this egg is different from hen. That is stupidity. No? There is no egg without chicken. There is no chicken without egg. They are one, like my hand. My hand has two faces.
There's a mirror behind you. Some people can see both sides of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Wise men can see both sides, But only kids, small kids see. Oh, this is my hand, this side, not this side. Just like that. Okay. All human knowledges are like this, dualistic and realistic and egocentric, egoistic. And number 7, this, the idea is a little different. That the world and the mind must be one. Sometimes we call mind, sometimes we call world. There is no mind without world. There is no world without mind. They are, just like a hand and appearances. There is no, hand, it has no characteristics. Characteristics, or objective. When there is no this plant, there is no color, no form, no matter, no value, no characteristics, no substance, no activities, no values, no beauty, anything. The plant, in this case, is a subject. And all attributes, belongings, are called objective, object. And the subject and the object depend on each other. There is no subject without object. There is no object without subject. There is no subject of plant, does not exist without objective or belongings or attribute of this plant. Attribute is object. and plant itself is a subject. You know. Characteristics or nature is objective, belongings. And the subject is, holding all, attribute, characteristics, substance, or nature, or activities. So there is no subject without object. Subject is a human mind. Like, human mind is like a subjective. And the world is objective. So when mind is pure and clean, world become pure and clean.
That's a concept.
Yeah, you know
What is
that. Yeah,
that?
yeah. So if you understand it, your mind is very clear and clean and clear. No? So world is clear. Am I clear? And is this plant clear? I don't know. You know that, because this plant is a part of your mind, your concept. This plant does not exist by itself without your mind. This plant exists in your concept, in your mind as a concept. If you have no concept of this plant does not exist in your mind.
Concepts, they kind of come from words. I mean, if I didn't know that this was a plant, then, I mean, as a child, I said, this is a plant, that is a flower. If there were no words, would there be no concepts?
Child does not know the word of concept, but they have a concept. Concept is not a word. No, reality is not a concept. I am not a concept, but I reflect in your mind. That is your concept. So I am, not your concept. Everything is not a concept, of course. But the people would understand something. That something is a concept of the certain person. Concept is mental image. No? People have no mental images of the things. He does not know anything about the thing. Concept is so important. No? For instance, when you lost your past memories, you know nothing. You don't know your name. You don't know your house. You don't know your parents. You don't know your friend. Even you cannot speak. You lost your languages. No? So when you have no, that memory or concept, you know nothing. Just like a blind man, deaf man, that's no feeling. How about that? Yes, sir.
So you said, perhaps, does a thing exist? Can a thing exist outside of human concept?
No, I don't think so. No one can say that. No one can say that.
If I walk into a tree and I was looking the other way, I had no preconceived concept that this is a tree.
No.
But the fact that the tree exists is very clear to my side of my face if I'm hit by the tree.
Yeah. So that is your concept, Concept is clearly, cognized, knowable. But if you have no concept of the thing, there is no thing. We cannot say there is no, you know. It is beyond existence and non-existent. No? Therefore, we can't negate it, affirm it. Both. Yes, sir.
Couldn't you say, if you hit the tree and you didn't see it, then you would have concept of pain, but you wouldn't have concept of tree, of the tree, right?
Both. Both are concept.
Yeah, but if you wouldn't know it's a tree, so you only have the concept of
Yeah. So that is, you have no concept of tree, but you have a concept of pain.
Yeah, then you say, oh, and you turn around and you get concept
Yeah,
of tree.
yeah. That is a concept of tree. Yeah. So, you know, that's anything you know, no, that is a concept. Yes.
Do only human beings have concepts?
I don't know. It is very difficult to say. Ask some, you know, that's some, oh, they don't know that. How to say? Yes, sir.
We observe animals interacting in nature,
I don't know animals' mind.
but we can observe them.
No, it's impossible.
You have concepts.
You know, animals' mind is my mind.
Not their mind, but their action.
Action is my observation.
There-
Yes, sir.
There's an ape they've been training to do sign language,
I think so.
and it creates its own concepts in
Yes.
speech with its hands.
Yes, I think so.
So it must have concepts.
Yes, sir. I can say, I think so. That is a concept of the monkey. Yeah. Monkey have concept, yes. I think so. That concept is my concept, though. Not the monkey's concept. Monkey's concept is unknowable. But I think that monkey has a concept. Yeah.
Could you say something about your purpose of this Buddhist psychology?
Oh, psychology is you know, it is only a way of thinking and a way of explanation. So it is not always true. There is no truth in Buddhism, no. Truth is only a concept.
Forgetting about truth now, wouldn't it be, could you, or would you mind, you know, going, say, back to the Buddha, the way you think about it,
Yeah.
and give us a little information about the purpose of what you're doing?
Oh, that Buddha, you know, when I understand, he is my part of my mind concept. I don't know real Buddha.
Yeah, but forget about the real. Just let's talk within the illusion, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, you know, everybody, you know, that read a book or heard a story of the Buddha, understand the Buddha. Oh, Buddha was a man like that. That is a knowledge of Buddha. Knowledge of Buddha is not the true Buddha. What is a true Buddha? Only the person who understands the truth can understand the true Buddha. Most of people understand the Buddha with their knowledge. The Buddha in the human knowledge is not Buddha. Buddha and this plant are not different at all. No? This is suchness. Buddha is suchness. Buddha was enlightened. This plant is enlightened. No? When you understand so, everyone is who is enlightened. There is no difference between Buddha and every, things. So, Do you know what Buddha is? Who was the Buddha? Don't understand it. All understanding is illusion, not real understanding. There is no real understanding. All human understanding is delusion and illusion, incorrect. Fit your understanding and pacify your mind, and make your mind serene, quietly, and pacified. Then you can understand true nature of the universe, and also true nature of the all existence. That is tranquility. Tranquility. That is the nature of everything. No? Buddha realized that enlightenment. No? So he realized all other persons' true nature. That was tranquility. That's why he attained, became the Buddha. That is Buddhism. No other teaching in Buddhism, no. When you realize your true nature of tranquility, no, you are enlightened, and you can realize your true nature of the or Buddha nature. Not difficult. That is for your sake, not for others. Each person must, attain to Buddhahood. Yeah. Because you are the Buddha. No other Buddha living in the whole universe. Gautama Buddha is not the Buddha. It is only, that's significance, that or a symbol. Symbolic, character. That was the Gautama Buddha. There were many, many hundreds, thousands, millions of Buddha before the Gautama Buddha. Yeah. So, after the Buddha, we have a million, billion, trillions of people, are the Buddha. Who are the Buddha? Not only human beings, all beings, plants, the flowers, the animals, bird, insect, fish, everything are the Buddha. When your mind becomes tranquil and serenity, you can understand that this whole universe is my house. This house is tranquil from the beginning. No troublesome, no suffering, no fear, no anxieties. Always is now. Nothing changes. Right away, right now, this state, you are stay still. Plant is stay still. Now, just the condition never changes. It always now. Every minute, every second, there is no change, no transition. Do you follow me? Time is a big illusion. Time is not real. Okay? Space is not real. Life is not real. Death is not real. You must go beyond with your wisdom, Buddha's wisdom. Buddha's wisdom is not Gautama's wisdom. Everybody has that, perfect wisdom in them. You have a perfect wisdom in you. You must find out your true wisdom. Buddha is a person. Okay? He found his true wisdom under the Bodhi trees. He was a good example. He showed us, being the Buddha, being Buddha. That is Buddhism. Yeah.
And that's a concept.
Uh-huh.
And that in itself is a concept. Yes.
Concept is, no, not the concept is another concept. There is no concept anywhere, no. Don't attach to concept, no. Concept is the illusion. No one can possess concept, no. Yes, sir.
What do you think about Buddhism today?
What is...
What do you think about Buddhism today?
Buddhism is such the teaching of enlightenment of everybody, everyone's.
There are many different teachings of Buddhism.
Yeah, I think so. If put this flower, okay, and I make it, make into piece, make it into piece. So we have hundreds, thousands of pieces. But when it, get it back to the one, flower, it is one flower. So don't discriminate or don't, how to say, how to say, make it a piece, make it into piece. In another,
Fragment?
Fragment, yeah. It's, there is no fragment anywhere. One, universe is one. I am a universe. You are a universe. So you must be a universal nature, universal character, not an individual. This individualism, that is very bad, how to say, thought in the world, in philosophers. Some philosopher, that's started to think this kind of that's how to say, discriminate things into two or many. Sometimes we call it dualism. Sometimes we call it, pluralism. And also, that the individual is the smallest unit of existence. No. There is no smallest unit in the whole universe. Atom is not the smallest. Proton, neutron, electron, it's, is not the smallest unit of the world. So there is no smallest unit. And also there is no largest unit in the whole universe. Therefore, no middle. Human beings, individual is not, unit. Not not existent. It is only concept. I is a concept. Existence is a concept. Non-existence is a concept. Happiness is a concept. Suffering is a concept. Light, righteousness, that is concept. Wrongness, that is concept. Evil is a concept. Everything is a concept. Sound. That is the biggest, concept. Okay, then the last two, I have some meaning. It has some meaning. 9, true wisdom, prajnaparamita, is a profound and pure insight which is equally possessed by all sentient beings. However, it is not yet disclosed when one's mental state is not pure and clean. Oh, it is not so important. Any questions so far? Yes, sir?
What is a sentient being?
Oh, sentient beings is, the living, living beings, the broad meaning of living beings. They have sensual, feeling. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about dreaming is a concept, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And when we dream, do we dream in concepts, or is when we're dreaming, do we have a little breakthrough sometimes?
Oh, very interesting question about dream. Have you ever dreamt?
As of today, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know too. I dreamt many times, but it was not real or not real.
So that's it's concept.
Yeah, it is only a memory.
Oh.
When I'm dreaming, I don't know I'm dreaming. But later on, I have some, remembrance in my mind. I dreamt last night, That is memory only. But, that dream itself is gone, was gone. But, that's only remaining as a memory. Memory, dream is memory. So not subjective, not objective, no.
All things are like that. But all things are like
Yes, sir. Life is but a dream, yes.
That's the biggest dream.
I'm still confused with concepts.
Huh?
I'm still confused with concepts.
Yeah, I think so. I am also. Yeah.
If you're saying that all things are concepts,
Yeah.
so then enlightenment, is that a concept?
Yes, surely.
Buddhism.
Yeah, Buddhism is
some
a
of
concept.
it's just a concept.
Surely. Nirvana is a concept, death is a concept, life is a concept, happiness is a concept,
So there's
suffering.
nothing.
Yeah? Huh?
Nothing. There's nothing.
No, concept, not nothing. Concept.
No, you're saying don't
Concept
confuse
is
real
nothing,
things
not
with
nothing,
concept
no.
of it.
Concept is a concept, no other things. Concept is concept, not other things. Not nothing, not existence, no. Not good, not bad, no. It is it, as it is. No other explanation. It is like that, that's all. No? People wish to explain it and grasp it. No, people cannot grasp or understand anything with their mind. No. Human mind is so powerless that they cannot grasp anything. No. Are you happy? Yes, sir.
purpose? or-
Yeah, that there is no purpose in our in the human enlightenment. No, it has no purpose.
Is it worth doing?
Huh?
Is it worth attaining?
Yeah, the enlightenment is as such. It has no substance and no characteristics, no activities, no causes, no effect, no reward, and no enlightenment. There is no enlightenment in enlightenment. Don't make an illusion, okay? All you are thinking is a kind of illusion. Stop illusion.
Stop thinking.
Huh? Stop what?
Thinking.
Yeah, stop thinking. Yeah, stop thinking. Just say think not. Yeah. Yes, sir, you are first, yes.
Do you use mantra, and do you think it helps you?
Yeah, I think mantra is always very helpful. Do you hear some mantra?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Open sesame. Yes.
I was told once there's only two mantras, yum and yuck.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. Yam and yeah, that is the Tibetan mantra. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If a person is deep in meditation, and their mind is clear
Oh,
of anything.
there is no mind in meditation. Not clear mind, not dirty mind. So, okay, any other question? Don't think anything in your meditation, no. Practice of nothing, practice of emptiness. That is a true meditation. Yes,
Should human beings strive for enlightenment?
enlightenment, strive? Yeah, some people, because they love themselves. Those people like enlightenment. Enlightenment is already, everybody is enlightened. You know, why do they need, another enlightenment?
I have a good question.
Yeah.
Is everything the way it is now, right now, perfect?
Yeah, that's right.
I think so.
Yeah, that is you are enlightened. Yeah, you are enlightened. I think you have no problem anymore. That is you are enlightenment. Huh? So, okay, we have more and more things. More illusions. Okay, how about the last page? Not the last page. I'm sorry, middle page. I think this is good for you. This is the part of Nagarjuna's commentary named Majjhimaka Karika. That is the middle path. This is very famous in the Buddhist the doctrines, Majjhimaka, middle path. he negated all existence or origination and cessation, and also the oneness and dualism, and I would say existence and non-existence, and also the construction and destruction. So this is the only part about non-origination and non-duration and non-cessation, appearing. Only some of them I picked from that Karika verse. Karika is a verse. I don't know, this is a little, that's logical. So, most of people hate it, to read it. But I know you are, you can read it. Number one, if that's the subject, only I picked the relationship between subject and object. Like I is subject, and my idea, for instance, the world, is my object. Subject is a knower. Object is a known. But those two are inseparable. We cannot divide it into two. They are helping each other. But most of people, they divide one thing into two parts. That is human stupidity. So they have very much struggles or strifes. Okay, number one, if prior to and separated from object, subject is admitted to exist accidentally without object. Can you follow it?
It goes nowhere.
I think this is a little the different not a dualistic world. That's why you cannot understand. Very difficult. So I better omit it. Yeah, I think it's, if you have a time, will you read it at home? And, give me a question later, any time. Yeah, I think you need more time, Yeah. Okay, last page. That is difference between knowledge and wisdom. I showed that chart before once, but at that time there were not many people, only few people came. So I repeat it again. Knowledge is acquired. Acquired means is accumulated or experienced. But wisdom is innate, inherent. And knowledge is experienced, but wisdom is transcendental. And knowledge is subjective, knower. No? The man who has knowledge, he knows, how much knowledge he has. because therefore it is knowable. But wisdom is neither subjective nor objective. There is no knower, no known in our wisdom. And the number 4, knowledge is discriminated, but the wisdom is oneness. It's hard to say that, but, my idea is, when we make our concept, we must, compare our, new experience, new sensation or perception with old memories. Then produce a new concept of the things. That is called inference or judgment. But the comparison itself is impossible. People compare this flower and this plant. It is impossible. Only, ignorant people do that. This flower and this plant are quite different each other. No, there is no identical point. How do find out to find out the difference between those two? No? It is quite different. Even there is no one single point which is identical or equal. No? Therefore, it is foolish to compare those two plants. Can you follow me? No? And also, we cannot compare one thing, this plant and this plant, same plant. We cannot compare it because there is no differences. No? The same thing. We cannot compare same things, but we cannot compare different things. Even we cannot compare this flower and this flower. They are quite different. Okay? There is no identical, point. Yes.
Why do all human cultures have comparative understanding?
Oh, that is human stupidity.
But it's innate stupidity.
Pardon?
It's innate stupidity.
Innate.
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 Not acquired.
Yeah. I don't know it is innate or not, but innate is different. Innate is unknowable. You have two eyes, one head, two foot, and that is innate. Okay? Do you know you have two eyes? Sometimes, yes. Yeah. But most of the time, when you are born, you didn't know that. Innate is like that. That from the birth, people have that, that kind of qualification, or abilities. That is, innate character.
Would it be better for humans not to use
Comparative?
comparisons?
No. We can compare, but that comparison, we have a big contradiction in it. At first, we must conceptualize, an object. But the concept of the things is not things. How do we compare them? people do not know anything at all. Their idea is not real, things. Therefore, it is foolish to compare. Or it is because it is foolish to understand. Yes, sir.
In the Bible, it reminded me of Adam and Eve eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge
Yeah.
and falling from grace.
I don't know.
Paradise.
Yeah, it is the apple of the wisdom. Is that
Called
right?
the tree of knowledge in the Bible.
I don't know. There is no tree of knowledge. Anyway, that apple, Adam and Eve, living in the paradise, and there was a snake there in the apple tree, and deceived them. You eat apple. Apple is delicious, like that. So they didn't think so, profoundly. Just they tried to eat it. Accidentally, it was, poison apple. Human knowledge, in the Western world, is wisdom and knowledge are the same. Not clear discrimination. Wisdom is a part of knowledge. So not like the Buddhist wisdom. Buddhist wisdom is quite different, like this. But in the Western, the dictionary, I saw many times. But that that there is no special wisdom. Wisdom is very reasonable. The meaning, knowledge, and very righteous, knowledge. That is called wisdom. That's like Solomon's wisdom, Aristotle's wisdom, Socrates' wisdom, like that. But that is acquired. It is knowledge in Buddhism. I don't care. Sometimes all knowledges are wisdom in Buddhism too. One is wisdom, that when we have no discrimination, all knowledges becomes wisdom. But discriminated knowledges, concepts, are not wisdom. That is illusion. Anyway, that kind of wisdom, that Adam and Eve, that started to possess some judgment. This judgment is a kind of discrimination. You are, my wife. I am a husband. You are woman. I am a man. That is discrimination. Before they ate the apple, they did not care of those differentiation. But knowledge is to know or to understand the differentiation or difference of the things. That is called knowledge. Then what is wisdom? Wisdom is to know the equality of the things. That is called wisdom. That's why they are quite different. But when we know all differences are equal, equals are different, difference. When we understand that, that is called wisdom. Okay? Then, I don't know, Adam and Eve understood, that equality. No. Different, everything is different, but equal. Equal, but different. Do you understand this? No? That is wisdom. But human knowledge is, difference is a difference. Equal is equal. That is knowledge. Any question?
Can one possess wisdom without knowledge?
Yes, surely.
Is there any difference between a person who has no knowledge and, say, a child? Are children wise? Children without knowledge?
Yeah,
Infants.
of course. Children and adults have no different knowledge, wisdom. Wisdom is all are equal and the same.
So, we start out being very wise, and we become very stupid, and then we have to become wise
That
again.
stupid man always very wise, yes. Wise man is always stupid. Any objection? It is so, it is always so. If someone, I'm wise, he's the most stupid guy. So, on the contrary, someone, I don't know anything, so I am very stupid. He must be a very wise man. Okay, I'd like to finish this. Number 5, knowledge is conceptual. And wisdom is always intuitive. That this is very, I don't know, true meaning is intuitive or intuition. That is very difficult for me. So, that's kind of inside. That we understand. Without concept. I understood so, but it is very difficult to do that. To understand without concept, that is impossible. All human words are very contradictory. And number 6, knowledge is knowable, and wisdom is unknowable. How much wisdom you have, you don't know. But how much knowledge you have, you know that. Yeah. So knowledges are knowable. And number 7, knowledge is transmissible. This is also we have another opposite answer too. Even knowledge is individual and subjective. Knowledge is subjective. So it is impossible to transmit, to from one to another or the other. But wisdom is untransmissible. That is, it's a little, how to say, absurdity, inconsistent. And 9 knowledges are like delusive or elusive, fallacy or false, because there is no true wisdom anywhere. All knowledges are how to say, painted flower. It is food in our menu. Menu and food are quite different. But most of people mix up menu and food itself. I ate tonight the big, steak. That steak is a menu, not food. People always mix up concept and, the concept of the thing. And 10, it is mundane. Mundane is a human, world. It's a human, that mind is always realistic, dualistic, and egoistic. Therefore, we call it mundane. But wisdom is supramundane or supramundane. Because knowledge, not wisdom, equal world. So everything is equal. Different but equal. Equal but different. Different but equal. No, we shouldn't incline to either side. When we are inclined to one side, we call it partialism or partiality. No. Human mind is always partial or partiality. Dualism is partialism, partiality. Egoism is partiality. And realism is partiality. If they observe it, everything, just equally, unfairly, not fairly, we have no dualism, no egoism, no realism. So lack of wisdom. The man who has no wisdom, observe everything, partially, only seeing appearance side, not backward. Please, any question so far?
Who's the opposite of suffering?
I don't know. Usually we call it happiness. That I don't know. That is, I think it is true. Opposite of suffering is tranquility. Tranquility is not. There is no joy there. no pleasure there. But more than pleasure, more than joyful. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I still don't understand, on number here, it's number 8.
8, okay.
The difference between conditional and unconditional.
And human knowledge. There is a great difference between wisdom and human knowledge. The former, that wisdom, is an innate capability and transcendental intuition, while the latter is an acquired and accumulated. Yes. Is there something wrong? Something, that's a difficulty?
Teacher,
Yes.
I think he meant number 8 on this last page, conditional and unconditional.
Yeah, conditional. I skipped that. Oh. Yeah, that I skipped. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, number 8. Knowledge is conditional. Conditional means that's relative, happening. Relative happening. For instance, all knowledges, come from judgment, inference. That inference comes from perception. Perception comes from sensation. Sensation comes from, 5 senses. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So where those, senses come from? Come from eye organs and external some, element we call. Air, vibration of air, or some currency of the ray, color and light, and eye and those are currency of ray. Put them together and produce some sense of light, and sense of color. And the sound is also. If we have no ear, we cannot hear anything, even big sound, vibration of air. No other, organs can catch the stimulation of air. Yes.
They have a radio that you can wear around your neck.
Yeah.
And you don't listen to it with your ear, you listen to it with your bones.
That's right. That's true. Sometimes we, put, some microphone, not microphone, some speaker here, and talk. Then people can hear it. Sometimes we have, some aviator, put a microphone here, and he listen to the sound. So, not, but that vibration comes to the, eardrum, yeah. So condition is, cause and effect, relationship between cause and effect. If there is no causes, there is no effect. When there is no effect, there is no causes. Just like when we have no ear, we have no hearing, sense of ear, no sound. And when we have no vibration of air, we have no sound. So, that everything, occurs or arises, At that time, we have hundreds, thousands, and millions of small, courses, not the direct courses only, indirect courses, that universal courses concern to the producing one effect. So I said there is no thing arises without other things. That is conditional. Knowledge is conditional. But wisdom is no causes, no effect. Cause and effect unseparated into two. That is wisdom in Buddhism. Okay, yeah, we have 6 minutes more. Give me another question. Yes,
What's interesting to come to my thoughts just now was that philosopher in 18th century England, I think, or Scotland, David Hume.
Oh.
And he made the distinction and say there is no cause, there's no effect, only events.
Oh, yeah, we can say so. Everything is such. Now, we have a same theory in Buddhism. No causes. Causes is, it's a mundane theory, causation theory. Everything exists by itself as such. No causes, no effect. That is the theory of suchness in Buddhism. I think that the idea is same or not. I don't know. I never, read, his idea. No, I read, the many philosophers, Berkeley or Occam's or that, Locke's, that's, existentialisms in this, in the 17th century and the 18th century. But I never, heard that person. Okay, any other question, please?
I have one question.
Yes, please.
The quorum yesterday or last week.
Yes, anything. Yeah, please.
About the cat.
Yeah.
I was wondering if somebody said that since everything is connected, and that the cat is part of the Buddha,
Surely.
then would it still be cut in half?
Yeah. Is there something wrong to cut the Buddha?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we eat, the Buddha every day. Vegetable, food, all are Buddha. So, it is something wrong?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Wrong and right are just human discrimination. And that is only human concept. If you hate, to eat a Buddha, you cannot, live one day. Yeah. Now, air is a Buddha, so you can breathe it. Water is the Buddha, so you can drink it every day. So, we eat the Buddha, and we can, keep up our Buddha body.
So there's always communion.
Pardon?
Is there always communion with the Buddha?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are the Buddha. Is it something wrong? We can eat Buddha. No? So Buddha can eat a Buddha. That is the world. Yeah. Yes.
In the state of wisdom, or the state of
Yes.
are all actions and all thoughts the same?
Pain?
The same?
Same?
Non-discriminated?
Yeah, no, of course same, but different. Different but the same. Same but different.
In the state of enlightenment or wisdom,
Enlightenment and stupidity are the same. Yeah, but different. Conditionally different. Conditionally the same. No more question. Good. All right, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.